الحمد لله رب العالمين صلي وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. The other sect today is المعتزلة. This is the whole thing started. المعتزلة started when Al-Hasan al-Basri was given lecture رضي الله عنه رحمه الله. So he was mentioning the one who commit major sin. So he was asked the question, what the consequence for the one who commit major sins? He said he is تحت المشيئة, under the مشيئة. مشيئة means the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah wants, He will forgive him. If Allah wills, He will punish him. So a man, his name Wasil ibn Ata, was one of his students. He didn't like the Hassan's answer. So Ata, he left. He left the gathering. He did not like the opinion of Al-Hasan al-Basri. Even Hassan al-Basri was one of the most knowledgeable tabi'een. Ata, yeah. Ata ibn Wasil. Wasil ibn Ata, I'm sorry. Wasil ibn Ata. Mistake. Wasil ibn Ata. Wasil, the son of Ata. So he said, do you have something else to say? Hassan asked him. He said, yeah. He said, what is it? He said, he's not a mu'min and he's not a kafir. He said, okay, what does that mean? He said, he became outside the fold of Iman because he have committed kabira, major sin. But he's not kafir because he believed in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay, so then he said, what the situation here? He said this, he's in the manzila بين المنزلتين. So he has a status between two status, between kufr and iman. Okay, this is basic philosophy, right? So so he said, but so Al-Hasan al-Basri said, اعتزلنا واصل. اعتزلنا means he moved away from us. In Arabic, linguistically. اعتزلنا, he left us. Isolated himself, he left us. واصل. So the whole thing starts because of the statement of Al-Hasan called Mu'tazila. So they left Ahl Sunnah al Jama'ah. So here, when the Mu'tazila, they have the same belief of the Khawarij when it comes to the one who commit the major sin. Matter of fact, Al-Khawarij, they took their madhab from Al-Mu'tazila. Because Khawarij, originally, they were like a political party. They wanted the power and things like this. They didn't have any aqidah or deen to worry about. They were talking about just the leadership. But when it comes to the ruling of the kabira, the one who commit the kabira, they're all the same. They said, he is, now they said he will be in hellfire forever. مخلد في نار جهنم. Al-Khawarij said, he's kafir in the dunya and the hereafter. They don't commit the kabira. So this is the first thing. So the whole thing started because he differed than his sheikh and he made his own opinion. Of course, this is always happening. People differ without knowledge. They're not happy with the fatwa, then they have their own opinion. That's what happened. Follows his own theology. Have no dalil, nothing. Allah said, أن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا لا يشرك به. And Allah will forgive all sins except for shirk. So that's the thing. So he said, and plus, the one who committed the kabira, he make tawbah. So the one, they differ or contradict the madhab Ahl Sunnah al Jama'ah. The first thing, they believe the Quran was created. They deny all the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كل الصفات. ينكرون كل الصفات. So they denies all the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they believe in asma, they believe Allah's names. اعتقدوا, they believe the Quran was created. Yes. Mu'tazila. The Quran, Allah have created the Quran. They deny all the sifat, the attributes for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they all deny it, and believe the names for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, a lot of the ghaib, the unseen thing, they deny it. They don't believe in it. For example, they don't believe the punishment of the grave. They do not believe as-sirat, the path. They don't believe the mizan, the scale. That's why some of the scholars, some of the people of knowledge, they said they outside of the fold of Islam. They're not even sect. They're not one of the 73 sects of Islam. Because you know, sect, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they said the Yahud was divided to 71 sects. The Christian, they were divided to 72 sects. The Muslim, my ummah, he said, will be divided to 73 sects. He said, they're not one of them. Because everything ghaib, they don't believe in it. And the main one, there's of course many others. They took this methodology, but became like widespread during the Abbasid dynasty. The main thing they said, the one who committed the kabira, the major sin, and he said he's not mu'min, he's not a kafir, and he will be here in the hellfire forever, of course, if he does not repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They lived during the Umayyad period, but not much, but mainly they became like the biggest time for them was during the Abbasid, during the Ma'mun. Ma'mun, basically, he was a believer in that. And he had almost every scholar, surrounded with all the scholars, the one who believe in the same methodology. And this was the biggest time with the test for Imam Ahmad. Said fitnat al-Imam Ahmad fi khalq al-Quran, fitnat khalq al-Quran, the fitna of the creation of the Quran. And Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, the Imam, he was tested and he refused to compromise. Again, remember we said two men have saved Islam according to the people of knowledge, Abu Bakr and Ahmad. And he said he would never agree to this. So he was in prison and he was tortured during the time of Ma'mun, then in Mu'tasim, imagine two Khalifa, then he was in jail for 2.5 years for this reason. Then he was during the time of Ma'mun, during the time of Mu'tasim, he was house arrested. He's not allowed to leave this house. Then Al-Mu'tasim's son is named Al-Wathiq, the one who freed him, and he really supported Ahl Sunnah and Jama'ah, and he have honored Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. Their belief, their theology basically, you could see it in the belief of the Shia, Maturidiyya, they believe close to their belief. Basically, they represent the school of Aql and Kalam. You know, so there's this, they make sense, doesn't make sense, and so on. When this is all the school, we're going to come to the Maturidiyya, they got their belief from the Greek philosophy. This is got corrupted with the Greek philosophies. The way they started, the Mu'tazili, they started, the first idea was to them was that man, he's have free of choice. He does whatever he wants and everything he does. Matter of fact, he said he creates his actions. Then they came up with the second thing, which said the one who committed the kabira, the major sin, is not Muslim, is not kafir, and so on. He's in manzila bayna manzilatayn, status between the two status, as they have mentioned. And he said, but the hereafter, he will never enter Jannah. He said, you could call him a Muslim because he shows Islam. But really, you cannot call him mu'min though. They categorize their belief as they have three principles. One of them, Tawheed. The first principle is Tawheed. Said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically munazzah, meaning there's nothing similar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no one can challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His authority. And this is true. This is the first truth. But because of this, they built upon this, that there's no way for us to see Allah. Is that clear? Get you confused? They believe in Tawheed. They believe in Tawheed. There's nothing similar to Allah. As Allah said, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. This is our belief. But they said because of this, they said, okay, you cannot see Him. Because, huh? No, of course, yeah. All will talk about the Day of Judgment. And they denied the sifat, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of that. They said, "Laysa kamithlihi," nothing like to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only thing, because they resemble Allah to His creation. That's why He doesn't have hand, He doesn't have face, because they resemble. So it said, "Laysa kamithlihi shay." Allah is different, and no one can challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His authority. So you cannot see Him if you see Him, that means you resemble Him to a human being, because you can see a human being. Same thing with His sifat. They said, well, it doesn't have sifat, doesn't have attribute, because this is okay. Then you're saying He's a human being. So that's the issue we have. And they said the Quran created because they said, how could you say Allah speaks? Then you resemble Allah to the human being. The whole thing starts because they have this concept, which is if you say Allah speaks, then He's like us. Who said Allah speaks like us? Who said Allah has hand like ours? Why you resemble? Who said Allah has face like ours? So this is the whole thing, they came with this idea. They said al-adl, with justice, he said, in their opinion, Allah does not create the actions of His slaves. Allah doesn't like corruptions. So, but the people, they said, the man, they would do what they are commanded, and they stay away from the haram, because Allah gave them the ability, and this like basically built-in ability in their body, in their system, their head. So they are away from they do what they're supposed to do, and they stay away from the haram. But he said Allah did not command him anything, and Allah did not tell him not to do anything. Because they do the thing on their own. They have built-in system basically, and their head, they could do whatever they want. Allah did not create their actions. Allah did not. They have their own power. They could do whatever they want. Because they said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command the things He like, and He forbid the thing He doesn't like. And Allah basically, every good deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the reason, and every bad deed was just basically He has nothing to do with it. And Allah did not give them things they cannot handle. Well, they mix between the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ability that Allah is able to stop everything, and what He wants from us, which is they call the sharia or the will. So the sharia will different than His ability, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, Allah can stop everything, but everything under the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah doesn't like haram, like halal. Allah likes it with His commands, of course, and the sayyat, the bad, doesn't like it. But everything, you have the will for both of them, basically, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created everything. Allah, the one who made this and this, that both things Allah made it. The other one, which is, they said, al-wa'ad wal-wa'id, the promise and the threaten, said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward the good doers and will punish the bad doers. And he said, well, but does not forgive the one who commits major sin unless he repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. No, the Jabriya, the Jabriya, the Qadariya, different group, different sects. And he said the other one which we have mentioned, which is manzila bayna al-manzilatayn, he's not mu'min, he's not a kafir, the one who commits major sin. And they said, what's the one who said this basically? Their Sheikh Wasil ibn Ata. They said then the al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahi an al-munkar. The fifth principle. said to command for good and forbid the evil. Said this is mandatory upon each mu'min to spread the deen of Allah, to guide the misguided, and each one based upon his ability. If you're a sheikh, scholar, then you spread with your knowledge. If you have a power or muscles, with your sword. For this, they said, you should go and fight against the rulers. You cannot stay silent. Then this
They have a source for what they preaching for?
logic, yeah. So the other thing they said they depend on their mind, intellect, how they can derive their aqidah. So basically, if things make sense to them, that's good. If it doesn't make sense to them, it's not good, it's haram. If some sifat, some of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they denied it, all of it, and some they said they made ta'wil, they interpreted the way they want. For example, Allah doesn't love, but Allah said, Allah yuhibbul muttaqeen, Allah yuhibbul muhsin. So Allah, rida, which is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. They denied the hands and the eye, and they denied al-istiwa, when Allah rose over his throne. They denied all that. And because they depend on their intellect and their mind and whatever their logic, they have criticized the major Sahaba. And they basically named him with the ugliest names and accused him with the worst accusation. And they said when Ali radiallahu anhu and Aisha radiallahu anha, and you know the group of Ali was Ali radiallahu anhu and Ammar ibn Yasir wal Hassan al-Hussein wa Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu, said one group, and Aisha was Zubair wa Talha ibn Ubaidillah, they said both of them are fusaq, wrongdoers, both sides. And those people, they said, don't accept, they want to testify, it's not accepted. Don't believe anything they say. The battle of the camel, yeah. Yes. They tortured Imam Ahmed. So then he said, لا تقبل شهادتهم. Sahaba, they don't accept their testimony. All this because they made their belief based upon their intellect and logic and so on. One of those, the books, the nice books by Shaykh Islam Tamir rahimahullah ta'ala, to answer or to refute all their claims, said the book is درء تعارض العقل والنقل. So the problem is between the authentic revelation and the sound reason. He said somehow they according to them they contradict each other. So the revelation never contradict the sound reason, sound mind. So, I don't know. This is done with the Mu'tazila, but here a couple of things the scholars have mentioned here. Said you cannot use your mind, you cannot use your intellect when it comes to the ghaib. Because, for example, the ghaib, if you bring the worst kafir and the best mu'min, you open their graves 5-10 years later, you find bones. How would you know logically this being punished and that one is not punished? So logically it doesn't work. So the ghaib, you cannot use your intellect when it comes to the ghaib. There's no you cannot, like they said, reason for that. Yeah, في كتير طبعا. بس we don't want to burden the guys. A lot of names. Yeah.
They said they use intellect
And they use logic, yeah. No, they use logic. You cannot use logic when it comes to ghaib. Their own logic. They use their own logic, that's why they did not believe the ghaib. So that they believe the light. So the scholar said you cannot use, let me finish, inshallah, we can go to the questions, 1 second. So basically you cannot use your logic and your intellect when it comes to the unseen matters. Never. How could we walk on the sirat, which is Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, thinner than a hair, sharper than a sword? Doesn't make sense. But do we believe in this? Definitely we have no doubt about this. Right? So how will Allah bring us back to life? We have no doubt. So how are we going to bring ashes back to life? Human being. If you use your logic, it doesn't make sense. But definitely we have no doubt in our heart this is going to happen. So that's why they use logic, subhanAllah. And they take their intellect over their revelation. That's the problem. So the only thing when it comes to this, the ghaib has to have two sources, which is the book of Allah and the sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nothing else beside that. There's scholars here, there's so many scholars. Main one, of course, Wasl ibn Ata, and there's so many of them. One of them, he named Ghaylan Dimashqi, which was one of the big ones. This was famous during the time of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Hisham ibn Malik, I mean. And during even toward the end of the Khilafah, Umar al-Aziz, his name Ghaylan Dimashqi, many of them, he said Abu Hussein ibn Umar al-Khayyat from Baghdad. There is Amr ibn Bahr, Abu Uthman al-Jahad, the famous author, right? Al-Jahad was from Mu'tazila. Al-Jahad. So this is the thing. So the main Khalifa was during Ma'mun al-Mu'tasim, they adopted this theology, and all the scholars around them, they have the same belief. And one of the major ones is named Ghaylan Dimashqi, one of the most famous ones, beside and Al-Jahad, of course, and many others. His son, but his son released him from jail. He put him in a house arrest. So Ma'mun put him in prison. He imprisoned him. His brother Al-Mu'tasim came after Ma'mun. He made him in a house arrest. He's not allowed to leave the house. The Wathiq, Al-Mu'tasim's son, he came and released him, and he support the method of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Inshallah, we'll stop for this one. Nowadays, whoever believes this stuff, there's a lot of people nowadays that said this, their belief spread among the Shia and the Maturidiyya. The Maturidiyya, they don't believe Allah has face, they don't believe Allah have hands, they don't believe Allah have many of the attributes for Allah, they don't believe it. This is Mu'tazila. And this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirmed in the Quran, Allah has a face. But again, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they say Allah has a face, but not, we don't know how. The word how, we stop. We cannot deny what Allah have confirmed for himself. That's the issue with them. The issue with them, they resemble. Say, oh, say this one, you're a kafir immediately. Nowadays, there's people like with this methodology, this belief. If you tell them Allah has face, they said you're a kafir, don't talk to me. How dare you? Allah said that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said hand. As Allah said, I have created, what's his name, Adam alayhi salam, with my own hands. بيدي خلقت بيدي. Okay, what do you mean? So they translate this to power. So the things are clear, and they deny that's Allah above the throne. And there's a clear, Allah said, ثم استوى على العرش. In many ayat, then he said, he rose over the throne. How? We stop. Imam Malik have confirmed this, according to the understanding of this, the Sahaba and so on. No one denied that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rose over the throne. But how? We don't know. In a way comparable to His mighty. Oh, Allah comes down to the lowest heaven. Don't say that. That's their belief. So the thing is, of course, He comes down low in a way comparable to His mighty. They said, no, His power comes. And Allah is everywhere to them. So there's a lot of things they discover. Nowadays, there's people, the Shia believe some of that, and Maturidiyya have the same, some of their beliefs. And those are all over the place. All over. ما بعرفه. لا ما عندك ما بعرف مكان. طيب إن شاء الله أستاذ بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك الله بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك